Hey everyone, it's me, Amanda Stevens, and like I promised in the Patreon update, I'm going to try to hold myself accountable, really bad at this, at producing semi-daily content, answering questions that you guys have asked me a ton, as well as sharing sort of my thoughts on topics and maybe do some reviews. And today we're going to tackle how I got into content creation in esports. Because I get asked this question a lot, and they're not separate questions by any stretch of the imagination. And the one thing that I've learned, as this is take 4, is that it's a pretty long story, and I'm going to try really hard to keep it at the core of the elements. This little Wakanda thing that I'm doing right now. Talking with your hands is weird. Anyway, so it all starts when I go to this camp called USDAN. My parents sent me to a performing arts, creative arts camp on Long Island called USDAN, where I had a major and a minor. My major was computer graphics. My minor was creative writing, because I was really, really, really into poetry at the time, but my parents wanted me to learn, even at that age, kind of wanted me to learn a skill, because I went to this camp leading into high school. My parents were trying to push me in a direction of like an actual career, and creative writing isn't a career. It's true, it's not a career. There are people who do it for a living, and those people are great, and I'm not one of them. Anyway, I met a kid named Sam who introduced me to Transmetropolitan, which would change my life. For those of you who don't know, Transmetropolitan is a comic book about a futuristic journalist named Spider Jerusalem who effectively single-handedly takes down a president worse than Trump. That's right, a president worse than Trump. That's a whole nother story for another day. In that comic book, though, Spider Jerusalem, for quite some time, writes for a newspaper called The Word. This is important. I had been entertaining the idea of doing a zine. I'd learned about it from the perks of being a wallflower, and so I decided to create a zine for poetry called The Word, because I'm original. I'm original. Anyway, this would be the most important lesson for me in content creation that I think I'll have in my entire life. Which is, you could be doing some really dope shit and no one can give a fuck. And you're gonna have to be okay with that. And that's a lesson that I forgot somewhere between the end of high school and college / other projects that I'd be a part of. But it's definitely something that, as I was preparing for this video, that I was like, wait a second, I did The Word and nobody cared that I was doing it, but I still did it. And like I said, this would be, I guess, what would allow me to do all the other stuff that I did. Like, I worked for my high school's newspaper. We put out 7 issues in 3 years. Nobody read it. Nobody came up to me and said, hey, Amanda, you did a really great job on this article. Nope, nobody cared. Guess what? Still wrote for the school paper. Didn't matter. Did the paperclip, my school's literary magazine. Did that for almost all 4 years. Guess what? Nobody cared. Very few people came up to me and said, Amanda, that's a really cool poem you wrote. Guess what? Still wrote for the paperclip. And these 3 moments in my life, which are not spaced, there's not a huge amount of space. They're pretty much very close to each other. I think is what allowed me to continue doing writing, right? So I go to college for journalism, and I'm forced to blog for one of my classes. And this would sort of create my lifelong love of blog, while also hate being called a blogger, because it has somewhat of negative connotations. But that's probably just me. Don't worry about that part. Anyway, I also was forced to have a Twitter, and at that time, Twitter would tell you hey, are you into this? Well, here's the hashtag for it. So I was part of the Magic the Gathering hashtag a lot. And somebody put out a call for writers. Because at the time, pretty much everything was like a blog. Star City Games had a blog. Mana Nation, which is now Gathering Magic, was just sort of a blog that Cool Stuff Inc. promoted. Mana Deprived had just started, which is also started as a blog. And somebody had asked if anybody wanted to join his site that he was launching called Top Deck Hero. Because at this time, Magic content creation was the Wild Wild West. Every week it seemed like there was a new website. Every week there seemed to be 5 new podcasts. And sort of everybody was copying one podcast structure that was popularized by the A-Team. Anyway, I said yes. And I wrote about a format that nobody cares about, story of my life, called Tribal Wars. But I had fun writing about it. I wrote about knights, I wrote about clerics. I had fun writing these articles. But then, out of nowhere, Mike disappears. Stops replying to messages on Skype, which is how we used to communicate off Twitter. Wasn't replying to DMs. And me and Lewis were bitten by the content bug, and we didn't know what to do anymore. So we got on Skype one night, and we're discussing how much it sucks that we're not doing Top Deck Hero, and all of a sudden that sort of just becomes a sort of vent about how much we love doing Magic content and we want to keep doing it. And you know, do we reach out to KYT and join Mana Deprived, or do we try to write for Mana Nation? And then I say, no, we're gonna start our own site. Because I started the word. Nobody cared, but I started that shit. So I said, we could do our own site. And we're trying to figure out the name of it, and I have WordPress open, and his wife goes, why don't y'all name it Red Site Wins, like Red Deck Wins? Light bulb goes off above my head. I say, yo, that's dope. Do-ba-doo-doo. Register. I'm like, all right, cool, our site's name is Red Site Wins. And Lewis is like, wait, shouldn't we discuss that? And I was like, nope, too late, it's already happened. And I still think Lewis is a little butthurt about that. But we did that for a long time. And it was the first time in my content creation career that people actually cared about what I was doing. We weren't big, like we weren't Mana Nation big, we weren't Mana Deprived big, but people knew who we were. I remember going to a GP and someone going, hey, aren't you Amanda and who else was there? Jason. Aren't you Amanda and Jason from Red Cast Wins, which is our podcast? And we looked at each other and we were like, yeah, that's us. Like, first time ever that I felt like people cared about the content I was doing. Unfortunately, Red Site Wins stopped. We stopped for a lot of reasons that don't really matter to this story. And I was kind of blogging on my own at the time. Like, I was just doing blog stuff, occasionally writing about anime. And a friend of mine asked me if I was interested in writing for a women's gaming site called Girl Gamer Vogue to write about anime and Magic. And I was like, yeah, sure. I like fashion. I identify as a female. This site seems dope. Like, it looked really cool. All the people involved seemed really cool. And so for a while, I just wrote about anime and Magic. And it was fun. But another story of my life is joining projects that end. Sometimes by my own fault, sometimes by other things. And once again, I was kicked out into the void. And I didn't know what I was doing. So Svenna, I saw, was now writing for She Attack, which is now the teamBossLayer.com. And it's another women's gaming website. And I say to Svenna, hey, can you get me involved in this project? I miss writing. Mind you, Girl Gamer Vogue, She Attack, both didn't pay. This was free writing. This is a very common thing in games writing and in games blogging, of working for free or working for press passes or working for incentives. We did an incentive program where people got gift cards if they had the highest views each month. So I write about Magic, some video game stuff, very few anime, and League. And this would be the first time that I would write about esports. I wrote match recaps, another story of my life of doing something that nobody cared about, and I would write about the metagame. I would write about how to play the jungle role. I would write about how to if you're a new player, how to discover the roles you want to play. I wrote about warding and vision control. I also interviewed people like Richard Lewis. And in that time, I developed, using my skills on Twitter, I reached out to a lot of content creators, Kelsey Moser, Emily Rand, Drexen, who runs Esports Heaven, and, well, he found me. And Nilu, all these people who, you know, are OGs in the League of Legends content scene. And I would constantly badger them for thoughts on on the meta and sort of project my own thoughts and see if I was correct. And that led to me writing an article, because I was into China. I was into Chinese League of Legends at the time, and I still kind of am. But I was watching a game, and Snake Esports does the craziest thing at the time, which doesn't sound crazy now. Their top laner took Smite. He took Smite and Teleport, went Shyvana, and even though rewatching the game, he didn't like do super hot, they won, but he ran around the map and just counter jungled. Like, took every Gromp, took a lot of wolf camps, and built Cinderhulk, which at the time was busted as a, like, so busted. And yeah, he was a menace, and he created a meta where people were taking Hecarim, Fizz, Shyvana, sometimes Jax as Smite top laners. And I wrote an article about that match and then how that match influenced the meta. And this was the hardest I had ever worked on a League article, and it led to me getting noticed by Esports Heaven. I then did some content by Esports Heaven, so people started paying attention to me. Because I'd done the Richard Lewis interview, I became friends with Jacob Wolf, which is a funny story. And sort of that's how I got into esports. If I never did the word though, right? And didn't care that nobody cared that I was doing it, I don't know if I'd still have gone into content creation. I think I would have gone into copy editing. I think I would have gone to college for journalism, because I found out in high school that I was really into copy editing, and I would have become a copy editor. And I wouldn't be filming this video for you guys. So one of the morals of the story is to do stuff no matter what people think of it. If people are telling you though that it's bad and it's like actual criticism, you should probably look into that. But if nobody's paying attention to your stuff, that doesn't mean you're not doing something cool. It's probably a branding issue. The other lesson I learned is to keep doing things. This is a problem that I still have. I still have a problem with consistency. But what I did learn is that the more I work and the harder I work, the more I get recognized and the more opportunities I've gotten. Like doing this Patreon. So one, thank you guys, but two, don't stop. Just because you have 0 viewers doesn't mean that you're gonna stay at 0 viewers. Just because you have no one's retweeting your stuff doesn't mean no one's ever gonna retweet your stuff. If you keep doing it and you keep doing cool shit, eventually cool shit's gonna happen for you. But yeah, that's my story of how I went from a non-content creator as a little kid, right? I started in basically high school. But yeah, that I hope answers the question of how I got into content creation and how I got into esports. The next video is probably going to be about my expectations for EVO. I don't know when that's going to go up. This is hopefully going to go up soon. But once again, remember, thank you guys. And remember to go beyond and plus ultra.